Welcome to another tutorial here on the Halftone Pro panel. This time the tutorial is about the manual part of the Halftone Rosette for black fabric. If you haven't watched the tutorial on the automatic part yet, I recommend you check it out because there are a lot of interesting technical details you need to see. Well, here in the manual section, there's a very small difference compared to the automatic ones, which is that you'll need to configure some script prompts so you can change the halftone characteristics here inside Photoshop. So again, you open your image here in Photoshop, either with a black background, which is the halftone for black fabric, or with a transparent background, okay? Here, I click on the manual section and it already opens the first script prompt. Here, it's just to set the frequency, LPI. So here, by default, I'll set it to 30, which is a frequency I like to use a lot. So, okay, and let's move on to the second prompt. Here, you'll determine how much shadow you want to clean up from the design. So here, by default, it's already set to 40, which is the same as the app's automatic button. So here, if I leave it at 40, it'll be the same as the automatic button. But that's not the goal. The goal here is for you to change the halftone characteristics. So here, the lower the value, the more shadows from the design it will preserve. The higher the value, above 40, the more shadows it will clean from the design. So here I'll do two examples so you can see in practice how this works. First, I'll set it to 10 and let's move on to the third prompt. Here, it basically works in the opposite way of shadow removal. Here, it's the intensity at which the halftone is applied over the highlights. Here, skin tones, areas with lighting, brighter areas. By default, it's already set to 30, which is a pretty smooth application. It doesn't look washed out like that washed out design, and it also doesn't get so faded that you lose the balance between preserving the design, the bright areas, and the application of the halftone. If I set it to 10 here, it'll apply less over the bright areas. As a result, it's going to make my design look more washed out. I'm going to set it to 10 here, and here I always leave it at 300. Then you adjust and configure the proportion according to your specific requirements. We're done. Now just let it finish. All set. The first effect is applied. I'm going to go back here, use the original manual part, 30 LP, and hit OK again. Here for shadow cleaning, I'm going to set it to 60. I'm going to be more aggressive with the shadow cleaning. And here for the highlight texture, I'll set it to 80. I want it to apply the halftone to more light areas here. I click OK. OK, again. All done. Halftone finished. And here, just by switching my project up here, you can already see a huge difference when it comes to shadow removal. Here, it's a halftone with preserved shadows, so you see a lot of dark areas in the design. It's a halftone with less application in the lighter areas. So here you already see a solid face, you already see a solid neck. Here too, it's really solid. On the car, you can already see it's solid, there's no screen tone. On the other hand, here, it's a halftone where more shadows have been removed. So you don't see those dark tones. You see a much cleaner halftone. And here it has more intensity in the lighter areas up here on the car. You can already see the screen tone here on the side, here on the face. You can already notice the screen tone in the lighter areas. If I zoom in, you can see it even more. Let me just apply the black layer underneath. Notice that here it already has a well-applied halftone in the lighter areas. On the other hand, with a lighter, less aggressive application, it preserves the more washed out design. These settings are just technical configurations. Here, you decide according to your design and also your intended application. A downside of this halftone with preserved shadows is that it usually leans too much into shadows, which the fabric itself will already compensate for. So here, even close to these highlights, if I use the eyedropper tool here, and come over here to these shadows, it's almost a black tone. So this here will be practically imperceptible. To the naked eye, this color here on the t-shirt will look like a glue texture because from this to black, it's practically imperceptible. So sometimes it doesn't make sense for me to preserve these shadows here. On the other hand, if I take a more aggressive approach to removing the shadows in the design, it'll give me a cleaner design. But on the other hand, as always, there's a good side and a downside. Here, it starts to lose some light details. Usually, these highlights have a more purple tone. Let me just zoom in here. Notice that here, next to the tower, there's a very purple light tone, a very faint light tone. And here, since you cleaned up more shadows, you don't have those details. Again, it's an analysis you have to make based on your design, and also on how you want the halftone to be applied. The lighting part too. Look here, it will have a more open halftone, the fabric will be more breathable, but it will lose a bit of the intensity of the colors and tones of the design. It's something very personal. It's something you'll have to test, especially if it's artwork for design. Send both options, ask what the client wants, so you can achieve a perfect application that will please both your production and the client. If you are your own client, if the application is for yourself, it's even easier for you to decide which configuration to use. Here again, if I go back to my original design, I don't know, I want to do a 35 LPI with the shadow cleaning a bit lower. I'll set it to 30 here, so it preserves a little more of the shadows. And here, I'll set it to 45, so it applies a bit more to the lighter tones. It will create a completely different application. So here, you have a much wider range of possibilities than with the automatic option. Here, it was calibrated with a tone that we think is fair, a tone that looks nice with just one click. You preserve just the right amount of shadow, and you also apply it to the lighter areas in just the right way. We included this manual option precisely so that if you don't like how the halftone was applied automatically, you can go in and make some changes to apply it your own way. Here again, shadows, fewer shadows. Here, it already lost the light details on the side of the tower. And here, I preserved a bit more shadow, and it already brought back some details for me. Again, it's another technical aspect. It really comes down to each person's preference and also to each piece of art. Let me grab a different artwork here. Let me just close this so you can understand how this issue of removing shadows can also have an impact. Let me see. Let me grab this Mario design here. It has some really dark tones in the background here, and I'm going to apply the automatic option. Okay, now just wait for it to finish. All done, it's finished. Here, you can already see a really interesting difference when analyzing the shadow issue. Because here, notice that it lost those dark wine-colored details in the background. It also lost some tones here on the bag area. Notice that those stripes disappeared here. So I have a design that doesn't have very strong shading. It's a more vector-style design. I can go to the manual section here. Set it here to 30 LPI as well. You can set it to whatever frequency you want. Here, I set it to 25 so it preserves a bit more of the shadow. If I wanted to apply a bit more on top, I set it to 40 so it applies a bit more aggressively to the highlights. I click OK. I wait for it to process everything here in Photoshop. All done. The design is finished. And here you can already notice that it started to keep the stripes and the wine color that were here in the background. The design looks a bit more lively because you leave more shadows and you can create a gradient of shadows. It's bigger, but on the other hand, it leaves more areas that usually aren't applied to the halftone. Usually it's clean. So if you preserve more shadows, consequently you preserve more tones close to the fabric. Here, if you look, it's a really deep wine color, very dark, so it almost reaches almost a black tone. So again, it's another detail that's up to your personal preference. What's the best solution for your design and also for your halftone application? If you have any questions, just get in touch with us by email or WhatsApp, and we'll be happy to help you out.